crucial because if you want to establish a baseline of the Trump loan, right, you have to show that VTB, why VTB, or that VTB was in fact underwriting. And what we have here is a document that shows the relationship between DBTCA and VTB, and it's ongoing during sanctions. So Trump would have had to get these loans signed, the most current ones anyway, during a sanctioned bank, and that's, it sort of gives you a baseline from what's going to happen next.
Hello and welcome to Counterpunch Radio. My name's Eric Draitzer. Thanks so much for tuning in, coming back to the show. First-time listeners finding the show, welcome aboard. Did a little hiatus on this show. I do apologize for that. Life intervenes at times, but we are back and we are ready to bring all of that good content that you've been jonesing for these last couple of months. So with that said, I want to just remind you that Counterpunch does depend on you guys for support. You can get a subscription to the magazine, help to keep us alive, keep us going, printing on paper, getting that website with original content every day. And I just stress, as always, the importance of supporting independent media. Independent media really does depend on all of us, and quite frankly, that corporate matrix of the corporate media is just so poisonous to us these days. So we really do need to support each other. And on that note, I have a couple of people on the line with me today who are also independent, who are also trying to get at the truth, and who have done some amazing work recently. So I'm very happy to welcome them onto the show. Scott Stedman and Val Broeksmit are with me today. Scott is the founder and CEO of Forensic News. ForensicNews.net is the website. He's an investigative journalist. His work has appeared in The Guardian, The Atlantic, and a number of other places. He is the author, most importantly, of the book Real News: An Investigative Reporter Uncovers the Foundations of the Trump-Russia Conspiracy. You can follow him on Twitter at Scott M. Stedman. Val Broeksmit is also with me on the line. He is a whistleblower on the Deutsche Bank I don't know what we'll call it, conspiracy. He is also the founder of the very important indie rock band Bikini Robot Army. He has 36 albums and a single to his name, and so much more. He is also a counterintelligence special advisor to the FBI related to all of the issues that we're going to be talking about today. And he has some hazy connection to Oxford and Cambridge universities that we may or may not we may or may not investigate during the course of this conversation. With all of that said, Val and Scott, welcome to Counterpunch Radio.
Thanks for having us, Eric.
Thank you, Eric.
So there's a lot to talk about. We could probably go on for many, many hours on all of the nuances, but I want to bring everybody up to speed because so much is happening in the world just in this last few days that it's very easy to miss gigantic, earth-shaking news stories. And in fact, Forensic News published one of these gigantic, earth-shaking news stories. Headline: Trump Deutsche Bank loans underwritten by Russian state-owned bank, whistleblower told FBI. That was published on Forensic News January 3rd. Major story. I want to just begin there. Bring us up to speed with a kind of a nutshell summary, if we could. Scott, what is in that story that people really do need to read for themselves?
Sure. So there's a few different sections to the story. The lead for us was based on our relationship with Val, who we've met with over the past few months. And he has recently told the FBI in their series of meetings and calls that he's learned from his sources close to the bank that the Russian state-owned bank, VTB, was an underwriter for Trump's loans at the bank, at Deutsche Bank. Basically, um, VTB went on to say if Trump would default, that they would take a hit. So it was basically a guarantee from the Russian state, and this is what Val has told the FBI in their continuing relationship. So that was the first chunk of our article, and then we kind of laid out Val as a legitimate whistleblower and how his documents have led to action. For example, with the New York Fed, they dropped a big fine on Deutsche Bank directly relating to the documents that Val gave them. Prosecutors in Italy have brought charges against senior Deutsche Bank executives based on, in parts, knowledge that Val shared with them. So yeah, that was the second part of our article, and then we get into more of the connections between VTB and Deutsche Bank, the Russian state-owned bank, and Deutsche Bank, the bank that loaned to Trump over $2 billion. So yeah, this is what Val has told the FBI, and we consider Val to be a credible source, obviously, based on the documents that we've seen. And that's kind of what the article was all about.
And I want to get a little bit of a sense from Val about that story. But if I could just follow up with you real quick, Scott, can you just explain for listeners the importance of understanding VTB, the role that it plays, and when you say that it's a state bank, what does that actually mean in the context of sort of the oligarchic system in Russia?
Right. So VTB is kind of known as, quote unquote, the oligarch bank in Russia. When we say it's a state bank, we mean that it's state owned, so basically controlled by the Russian government. The executives at VTB are all very connected to Putin. They have regular meetings. And like I said, it's the oligarch bank. So all the major oligarchs basically use VTB for their banking purposes. And just speaking with Russian experts, I don't think you can find a closer bank to the Kremlin than VTB. It's very, very under the hand of Putin and the Kremlin.
So the importance of this then is a, if not directly tangible, then an indirectly tangible link here between Trump and the Kremlin in some sense. So I guess that then raises the question, especially if someone who's listening is somewhat skeptical of these connections, that raises the question of who is Val and what is this information that he's providing? So Val, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, who your father was, and how you kind of found yourself in the middle of all of this with this information?
Sure. Okay. Well, I am Val, and I don't say. What was the first part of that?
Well, basically, a little bit about yourself, but especially about your father and how you and your father fit into this picture.
Sure. Well, your intro was very kind to me. I'm a musician. I have 36 albums in a single. I should really get that on a T-shirt, shouldn't I? And I've been a musician most of my life. And then all of a sudden my father dies, and then I'm no longer a musician. My father killed himself in London, January 26th, 2014. And it was very unexpected and very disastrous and traumatic. It was a crazy thing. And it changed my life completely. My focus, looking back on it now, my focus in life at that point became very narrow and very simple. And it was just figure out what happened. Why did my dad kill himself, and why? Or why did my dad kill himself? And who's responsible for it, et cetera, et cetera. And to bring anyone that contributed to that to justice, I guess. Which included a guy named Michele Faisola, included a bunch of other bankers I won't name, included a Deutsche Bank in general. And that's been my goal in life lately. And I don't know, and that's how I got in the middle of all this stuff, really. I don't really care about politics. I mean, couldn't give two shit. Could we swear on this program? Or?
Abso-fucking-lutely, my friend.
I couldn't give a fuck about Trump. I couldn't give a fuck about politics. And I couldn't care about fucking Glenn and opposition research. The FBI was just sort of like something you'd see in television, movies for me. It was nothing. I didn't. It was not in my purview. And then all of a sudden, when my dad kills himself, I'm thrown into the middle of this situation just by accident, man. It's just all accident. I don't know, man. I don't know how to give you the short version. We're gonna be here for hours if I tell you, but I'll try to condense it. The very short, simple way is that my dad left behind a bunch of files, a shitload of documents, Deutsche Bank, all his emails, and at the same time, my mother pulled a coup d'etat with the will, and so I was kind of left out in the cold on my own for many years. Since 2014. And all I wanted to do, and all my anger and my pain, I focused it all in Deutsche Bank and just trying to solve this mystery. And in the process, I figured out Monty DePasky was a dirty bank. I figured out who was behind these derivative trades that cheated billions of dollars out of the Italians and billions of dollars out of Americans and the Brits. And I found all these things, and I started giving them all these documents and emails, which at first I did not understand what the fuck I was reading. It was like looking at a fucking cipher, some kind of strange language, alien language of finance. Like the AWS risk-weighted positions of the ABX stock fucking trade. I mean, I didn't know what was going on. So I iTunes University. Have you ever heard of this?
Yes.
You do. You're like the only person. Everyone else usually just overlook this app on every phone. Every Apple phone has iTunes U installed on it, and no one ever opens it up. But man, it's a wealth of information. You can learn anything you want. And so I just started taking classes. The first one I took was a finance class by a guy in Princeton, a former hedge fund manager in Princeton. I was teaching a class 1 hour a week, 10 hours, 10 weeks. And I just started listening and watching and taking notes on my own. And then over the course of time, and I was really, really focused. So, I was super focused. With the help of Adderall, I was able to learn finance, at least the basics of finance at that point. And then I started giving documents to various news outlets. And word got out that I'm the Deutsche Bank guy that have all these documents. And oh man, people just kept calling constantly, just constant calls, which included one of my favorite journalists was Charles Levinson from Reuters. He was great. It's one of the first stories I worked on. And then comes a stalker. Something wicked this way comes, and I did not know. And he started out as a stalker. His name is David Enrich, and he's now at the New York Times, but he was at the Wall Street Journal at first. And this is before the Wall Street Journal was everything became so polarized, or like right versus left. The Wall Street Journal was still kind of a conservative, but not an asshole conservative paper at the time. But I still wasn't too happy about it. And I didn't want to work with David at all. And he just kept fucking calling, man, and just bothering my family, my sisters, my mother, over and over. And then I said, "No, I'm going to write a story about your father." And I said, "Great. Well, why? I'm not going to comment." He's like, "Well, you have to. I need you to comment. Do say something." I was like, "No, I'm not going to say anything. No comment. No comment." And so he decides to go ahead and publish without any comments from the family. And it was a huge fucking mistake. And I learned a very important lesson, which was that this minutia of fucking control is better than none. Just one comment. I could have steered the direction of that article that David wrote in late February, early March 2014. I could have had some control in it, but I didn't. And because of that, because I said no comment, he published the most ridiculous fucking article ever, which was that my father kills himself because, and he doesn't say it directly in the headline, but he alludes to it. He says, Bill Broeksmit kills himself amongst fear and anxiety into the Liber probe. So I was like, what the fuck? Like, who is he to say why my father killed himself? He has no idea.
Listeners, just as background, the LIBOR scandal of a number of years ago was basically the interbank loaning mechanism where the banks were basically found to be fixing the rates in their own interests in blatant disregard of law. Go ahead.
That's correct. That's right. The London Intercontinental Banking Interest Rates. That's what LIBOR stands for. And They set interest rates, and the basic gist of the scandal is that some guys would get these interest rates in the morning, and they would call their friends and say, "Hey, guess what? The rates are going to be today." To give them advance notice. And my father has nothing to do with this, not even a little bit, right? But David was writing a book at the time, right? So he decided that this would go great in my book if I could somehow fit it in. So he puts like a square circle in a round peg or whatever the fuck that is. The pegs in the circle. He somehow managed it to work. Actually, if you take a round peg and put it in a square circle, it does work. But it doesn't work the other way around.
This is the kind of knowledge that whistleblower can provide that you just can't get anywhere else.
Again, stop me if I go on a tangent. But what was my point? Oh, yeah. So David writes this fucking terrible article. So I am fuming. I mean, I am so fucking pissed. And I'm like, fuck this David guy and fuck this Wall Street Journal paper. I'm going to destroy them. And so I come up with this plan. And Charles actually could verify this, and so could a couple other friends of mine at the time. And the plan was to befriend David and get him to comfortable enough so he does not fact check every document I send him. And after a period of time when I feel it's right, I was slightly doctor a percentage point here or a number there or a name here, and then have him publish this in the Wall Street Journal. And then I called the Wall Street Journal saying, "Hey, I have the original document. These numbers don't add up. Something went wrong here. I think David Enrich did this doctor these numbers." And then that would be the end of David. In my head, I thought that would be enough to take down the Wall Street Journal. So that was my revenge plan for a very long time. In the December, fall, almost to the end, almost for a full year of 2014. Then the Sony hack happens, and Charles Levinson comes down. I'm working on a story with him about the Deutsche Bank stress test. And during the Sony hack, I thrust in the middle of this ridiculous, absurd fucking play. The scene was, you remember that stupid thing? And I got accused of hacking Sony. Basically, the hackers had just given me the information. I don't know why. I asked for it, I guess. Maybe no one else asked. I don't know. But I seem to be the only one in the English-speaking world that had the hacked Sony documents. And so I just gave them away to everyone. Gave them to Wall Street Journal. I gave them to Motherboard. I gave them to New York Times. Nicole Perloff, I remember, said, "Oh, I can't look at this for 2 weeks, but take a look at it in 2 weeks." Like the lawyers say, we're not allowed to look at this. The Reuters took it, and everyone else went with it. And then I was sort of thrust in the middle of that, and Sony came after me and tried to sue me. David Boyce sent me this angry letter threatening to take my firstborn child and chop me up in pieces and throw me in the desert. But David Enrich said, "Hey, Val, can I publish this letter from David Boyce in the Wall Street Journal?" And I'm like, "Okay, fine, go ahead." And, I didn't think much of it. And he published it. And within like 30 minutes of the publication, I started getting phone calls from everyone in the world asking for a comment or for more documents or doing a story on it. So, and that sort of took my mind off my father and the misery I was going through at the time. And it was enough to make me forget about my dastardly plan to destroy David. Because he's like, "Well, Val, I just made you famous for 10 minutes. Like, David, it's more like 4 minutes, but, it's okay. And we became sort of friendlier at that Sony hack, and I dropped my evil plan.
Did he not know about the 36 albums before that and that you were already famous?
No, he did not. No, David does not listen to music. But and that's never trust someone who doesn't listen to music.
Wait, what? He doesn't listen to music? What does that even mean?
No.
How do you not listen to music?
He does not turn on the radio and listen to music.
When he walks into an elevator, he puts his fingers in his ears.
Yeah.
He won't hear it.
He starts melting. Yeah. No, it's like he doesn't know he knows who Mick Jagger is and Keith Richards, but he doesn't know Charlie Watts. He couldn't name the rest of the Rolling Stones. He doesn't know much about 70s versus 80s versus 90s. He doesn't know shit. Like, the guy's a little out there, which is okay. I like out there people. But when they turn against you, it's not fun. So anyway, I befriended David at this point, and I let go my whole plan. And I told David about my plan, years later, and he thought it was funny, but he was scared shitless about it. I couldn't believe it. And we have this on recording, actually, when he came out here in January. But that's I'll get to that later. And my next goal was to find out what the fuck Michele Faisola was doing at my father's apartment that day my dad killed himself. And I'm not going into too much detail, but my dad was dead. He was on the floor. Paramedics were there trying to revive him. And paramedics said that the police are on their way and you might want to find some assistance because my mother was in no state to talk to anyone and I was barely in the reality we are in now. So I said, Mom, we need a lawyer. Do we have a lawyer? There's like a family lawyer of some kind. And I never knew we had one, but maybe she knew something I didn't. So I said, Mom, can I call somebody? And she said, call Michele. I said, who's Michele? She goes, call Michele. He's a lawyer. Okay. So she gives me her phone and pulls up Michele's number, hands it over to me. I hit send. Michele answers, said, hi, Michele, you don't know me. I'm Val, Bill's son. And, my father, he's killed himself. He's dead, and we need your help. Can you come over right away? And he says, of course. And he was there, like, in my head instantly. I mean, he was right there. Later, he would say that he had parked his car around the corner, and that's why he was there so quickly. And he was extremely helpful that day, but he was not a lawyer, nor is he a lawyer, and never has he been a lawyer. And I was like, well, my mother said you were a lawyer when he arrived. Like, I'm not a lawyer. I just work with your father. I don't understand. And I looked at my mom, and she was just inconsolable. So I let it go. But it stuck with me for a long time. Why did he get there? Why did my mom say he was a lawyer? I don't. And so these are questions that I needed to solve. And why did he go through my father's files? At first I thought it was innocent enough. He went to my dad's computer and started looking around. And I thought he was doing just the same thing I was, which was trying to figure out what the fuck happened. Well, why did my dad kill himself? There must be some evidence. And maybe there was a mistress or a gay lover or some secret family. Did he lose a lot of money? Was he going out at nights murdering people? And I don't know. I wanted to know, And I thought Michele was thinking the same thing. And he's very well might have. I don't know. But the more I got to know Michele, the more I see something else going on entirely. So after the Sony hack, I went back to the East Coast. I was in California for a while. And I came back to the East Coast to try and solve this thing with Michele. So I started calling people that are in my father's emails. People my dad was friendly with. There was lawyers and colleagues and old friends, and etc. And again, one of them was Michele. And I start emailing Michele, and we start having a conversation. And it continues on for a few more months. And he's very shady. He doesn't answer anything directly. And then I just started getting pissed off about that. Confront him, say, "Will you just answer my fucking question? What were you doing there? What's the problem? Was my dad involved in some fraudulent activity at Deutsche Bank?" And of course he wasn't. Like, oh no, he wasn't doing anything. Michele brings up the Monty Depofsky, and I'm like, what the fuck's a Monty Depofsky? And then it takes me a few months to do some Googling and some phone calls, and I learned that Monty Depofsky was the bank, the oldest bank in Italy. Formulated like 1495 or something like that. Well, maybe the oldest bank in the world. I'm not quite sure. But but they were in debt. God, they had $9 billion of terribly bad loans, or it wasn't loans. Sorry, it was derivative swaps, credit derivative swaps that they were hiding from the financial crisis just a few years before. And Michele's job was to hide the losses from the books and make it look like that Monty Depofsky was above board, and that they weren't a mess, and they weren't going to bankrupt the country, and that they weren't going to cause a recession in Italy, which they eventually did. Okay, and it was completely illegal. And my father was the risk manager, so he's told Michele, no, you can't do this deal. You can't deal with these people. It's just not. It's not good. It's not going to help us. So it's a big hard no. And Michele said, oh, "Okay, Bill. Okay, it's a no." So he goes and takes it to Anshu Jain, the CEO, directly, and says, "Anshu, I spoke with Bill, and Bill seems to be all right with it. Why don't I take on the lead on this Monty Depofsky deal?" And Anshu's like, "Well, Bill says it's okay. Go for it." Wrong. A lie. And he fucked that up. And this is why Michele is going to jail. He was convicted of his fraudulent deeds. about a few months ago by an Italian court, and now is facing 5 years in jail.
Now he was convicted. Correct me if I'm wrong, but largely based on evidence that you provided. No.
Yeah, probably. I don't know. I don't
It's one
speak
of those things
confidently.
where we don't have like a for sure ski answer. I mean, you can
Yeah.
say
Look,
you could probably talk about like the parliament and stuff and their interest.
Yeah, the parliament called me. They wanted me to testify. There was one English-speaking guy in parliament that I spoke to. His English was terrible, but they wanted to fly me out. I remember in 2018, around February 2018, and to testify directly to parliament about McKaylee's involvement in Monte de Paschi. And I said, look, I don't know all the details of it, but what I can give you are all the documents I have and all the documents I've amassed along the way. Which, on a side note, I spent about 2 years roaming Europe, from Siena to Amsterdam to Berlin to Biarritz, all over the place, and even Lugano, Switzerland, to confront Sergio Armati at UBS. But along the way, I amassed a lot more documents. So my father's cachet, the stuff I had from my father, now is just an aggregate of what I have. And along the way, I went to David Rossi's lawyer. David Rossi was a banker who was supposedly thrown himself out of a window in his office, and he threw himself out backwards, and he threw himself out with scratches on his arms and bruises all over his neck, and he threw himself out with paint underneath his fingernails, where he had supposedly not been scratching the window pane as he was not being pulled towards the window. And apparently there was never a watch that came in after him. About 2 minutes after he fell, a watch was not thrown after him and landed on his body. So I went to the family who clearly this was a murder and was caught on camera. There was a camera there that saw the whole thing. And I spoke to the Rossi family, and they gave me everything David had, every internal Monte de Paschi document you can think of. And yes, I gave that to the federal investigator, to the parliament, to the investigators in Italy. I gave it to a few journalists, Italian journalists as well. And then just recently, I gave it a home at DDoSsecrets.com, which is sort of a better WikiLeaks, run by Emma Best. Very good site. So it's up there if you guys want to see it. But you'll have to, learn Italian.
Just as a side note to everybody, we did the announcement on the 29 leaks here on Counterpunch a number of months ago. You can find that from Barrett Brown writing about the 29 leaks hosted at DDoS by Emma Best and others. So we really appreciate all the work that they've been doing as well. Scott, I wanted to turn to you, if I could, real quick, and ask you to fill in a little bit of details for us about this entity DBTCA. What is DBTCA? What makes it unique, and how does it fit into this story?
So DBTCA stands for Deutsche Bank Trust Company Americas, and it's it's a subsidiary of the bank that employs like 700 people compared to the 10,000 that Deutsche Bank has in the United States. And this subsidiary is the one that loaned all this money to Trump. And that total is over $2 billion. And so for the purposes of the article, we got what's called a breach report. And it's basically when a bank's liabilities are more than its assets. So we looked through this breach report for DBTCA specifically, which is just, again, it's just a small kind of little sliver of the bank as a whole. It's still billions of dollars, but it's yeah, go for it, Val.
Scott, you nailed it. It's right. And the reason why Scott is focused on this and why I am is because this is where my father went after his last retirement. Retired twice before. The third time he tried to go home, but the bank would not let him. They said, Bill, go to DBTCA and sit on the board and just say yes or no. Come in with the gavel, strike the gavel on a board a couple of times a month, and then go home with a ridiculous amount of money. And Dad's like, oh, okay, fine. And he does this, and what he finds there is a mess, a fucking shitty mess. A place that has no CFO, run just terribly, terribly incompetent people. And so
still doesn't have a CFO, by the way, just for the record.
That's right. Still no CFO. And it has 23 billion going through it. So it's not as small as you might think. I mean, sleepy, and it's not something you've heard of on a daily
Hmm.
basis. But as Scott was saying, I mean, it is crucial to what we're talking about, what's going on in the nation. So sorry, Scott.
Right. No, yeah, no, it's a good point. It's important to underscore that, DBTCA is separate from Deutsche Bank, and it might be, gibberish to a normal person, the normal person on the street, but it's a very important distinction because, like we said, this subsidiary was the one that lended to Trump. And like I was saying, based on the documents that Val gave us, we were able to establish that DBTCA specifically had a relationship with VTB. There was, I don't have the number in front of me right now, but there was something like $50 million that DBTCA owed VTB. So they were in debt to this Russian government entity. And that was part of the files that Val shared with us.
So I want to try to make a distinction. I don't know if it's relevant or not, but you can help me out here. So basically, what we can say is that Val is able to kind of establish this link, and the documents are able to establish a sort of indirect link through this subsidiary.
Yes.
Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. The documents, I mean, I wouldn't call them an indirect link. They don't prove the claim about Trump, but it is a very direct link and might be important to, not might, we know for a fact it is important to investigators, and they're looking at this relationship between VTB and DBTCA.
Right.
So yeah, it's
Exactly.
important, but it doesn't
It's
prove the
also
big Trump claim. But
it's
yeah,
also important, though, like Scott has been saying, it's crucial because if you want to establish a baseline of the Trump loan, right, you have to show that VTB, why VTB, or that VTB was in fact underwriting. And what we have here is a document that shows the relationship between DBTCA and VTB, and it's ongoing during sanctions. So Trump would have had to get these loans signed, most current ones anyway, during a sanctioned bank, and that's it sort of gives you a baseline from what's going to happen next. You understand?
yeah. And I should just say some of those documents that proved a relationship between VTB and DBTCA post sanctions were from 29 leaks. We got some business documents that showed that VTB was a course, or rather that DBTCA was a correspondent bank for VTB. And so again, those 29 leaks documents came in handy.
That's
Let me just do a quick backup for a second and just remind people when we're talking about the 29 leaks, we're talking about the leaked documents that came out of what's called Formations House in the UK, which was this private entity that basically existed solely for the purpose of creating these shelf companies whereby people from all over the world could hide their assets through various companies and basically pay a flat fee to these guys to create these companies. So the documents that have come out of that have shown a light on innumerable financial crimes that have probably taken place over the course of a couple of continents and a couple of decades.
correct.
Yeah,
But
I would
don't
compare them
forget about
to the
Sherwood.
Panama Papers.
Yeah, don't forget about Sherwood as well. In the
That's
same,
right. Yeah.
yeah, Sherwood was the Grand Cayman Bank that was hacked very recently, and we've got a lot of great stuff from there as well. In the same DDoS secret directory.
So also the point about underwriting, I think, is critical here. Can you talk a little bit about that? I don't know, Scott or Val or both of you, talk a little bit about underwriting and what that means and why it's critical to understand in this picture.
Yeah, Scott, you got it.
Sure. So so there's basically a couple of things here. One, I think I mentioned this at the top. Underwriting means that VTB would take the hit if Trump were to default. And we know he's done this before, obviously. So it's a
Yeah.
big deal that
So
someone
they
would.
take, yeah, that's right. They take responsibility. But underwriter also is synonymous with funder. You could say you need a new underwriter, Scott. We're not going to pay your allowance anymore. So it's your dad saying that. So you need a new benefactor.
Right.
Sorry, that was a joke, Scott. Sorry.
I don't personally. Do I? Do I need to do?
I'm just kidding. I'm just joking. But that's the basic gist. It's almost the same thing as a funder, someone that will fund you as an underwriter.
Yeah, and another point that we made is that underwriters have access to all financial information for the person that they're underwriting for.
Exactly.
So that would give VTB and thus the Russian government an inside look into Trump's finances, which we all know were kind of a mess at the time.
Exactly.
That's probably the most critical point. Let's that's a good moment for us to take a break. We're going to take a break.
Sure.
Listen to some music. On the other side of the break, I want to talk a little bit more about some of these specifics, and then maybe if we could zoom out a little bit and try to place all of this into the broader picture of Trump, Russia, and all of these other narratives. So stick with us. We'll continue the conversation with Scott Stedman and Val Broeksmit here on Counterpunch Radio. We'll be right back. And we're back here on Counterpunch Radio. I'm chatting with Scott Stedman and Val Broeksmit. Again, the website Forensic News is one that really does need to be in your rotation these days. ForensicNews.net. Really, really great investigative reporting there. Scott and the team do an excellent job. So if we could pick up kind of where we left off, I mean, we were talking a little bit about DBTCA and some of the broader, outlines of this story. So, Val, where do you come in terms of your interactions with the federal government, with the FBI, with the DOJ? How did all of this happen? Because obviously there's a number of steps between you discovering the documents and you being able to make those kind of connections.
Well, sure. I learned finance and I understood what was going on, and I decided in 2015 to reach out to the DOJ. Now, at the time, I was not in good shape, man. I was a mess. And I was like sort of roaming around the country in my car, sleeping in the back of the car, trying to figure out what the fuck is going on with my mom, why she's stealing everyone's money, and why no one is listening to me. So I sent an email to the DOJ, like sort of just an anonymous tip line, or their, call us if you got some sort of bank fraud statement. So I read an email saying, look, I got all these documents from my dead father, and I learned that the Deutsche Bank is up to no good, more specifically DBTCA. And at the time, there was some JP Morgan documents I had too, so I included JP Morgan. And I sent this email thinking that they'd put me in some protective custody, and I would have be somewhere to go live for a little bit while I could study all this stuff and finish my project, which was destroying Deutsche Bank. But I never heard back. And this is also I had a therapist named Larry who was advising me at the time, and he said, Val, you got to get protective custody. People are following you, and you got to be more paranoid. Like, Larry, okay, I'm gonna do it. So that's why I sent this email. I didn't hear back until fall of 2018, and that's when I get a strange text from someone claiming that they're from the FBI and would I be interested in speaking. And that scared the shit out of me. But this is the middle of my relationship with David and the New York Times. And David, a few months ago, had gone all in, or HarperCollins had gone all in with a book, and New York Times went all in with a profile. And we had been talking about some very secretive things and a lot of data that should not be public. So we were kind of paranoid about who was listening, who was watching, who was following, if any. And this guy that says, I'm from the FBI, without any formal documentation, says, hey, I'd like to come out to your house and talk to you about what you got. I'm like, what? Oh, if your house, that's not okay. You know what? We can meet in a hotel room. I was like, what? It's even worse. Like, no, I don't know who you are. Prove to me you're from the FBI. And he says, okay, I want you to call this number. This is my squad number. This is my name. This is my badge number. Ask to speak to me right now. And I'm not going to give you the number to call. You can just Google the FBI offices in One Federal Plaza in New York. I said, okay. So, I call and they connect me right to this guy. So I figured that's pretty good enough. He says, look, we don't do this over the phone. We're not going to tell you what we're interested in. And I don't want you to tell me anything you've got. We're going to come out to you. I was like, okay. He's like, well, how is this? Why are you calling me now? He says, you remember in 2015, you wrote this email to the DOJ? And I'm like, what? And I rack my brain. And it dawns on me that I did, in fact, write this thing. And he said, well, we just got it. He's like, well, that's a little slow. You're a little behind, guys. And, and his favorite line is like, I'm sorry, Val, I say this all the time, but wheels of justice move slowly. I'm like, okay, thank you. Thanks for that cliche, but come on out. And instead of my house or a hotel room, we're going to meet in a federal building around a lot of people. The door that can be arranged. So they come out, and they come out in, I think it's February. Oh, I have the tag. Hold on. It was February 27th in 2019. And they take me to the federal building. And I'm not allowed to sign my name anywhere. They don't want anyone to know I'm here. They fly out from New York. I think it's important to note that. They didn't just pawn it off to the Los Angeles branch of Los Angeles FBI people. They came out themselves. It was two guys, and they're good people, right? Straight to the point, no bullshit. Like, this is what we want. This is what we want you to give us. This is what we can give you, which is nothing, but you'll feel a lot better. But I don't know I don't remember exactly, but they sold me, man. They sold me. They said, because at the time, if I can just quickly interject, Adam Schiff and Moby and Nancy Pelosi and Dan Goldman. There's another thing that happened. I had been David Enrich came out here in January to fact check the book and to go over like the timeline of events. And we recorded all this on our phones on like the voice memo app. And then at the end of it, David says, you know what, can you guys turn off the recordings? And I said, okay. My girlfriend says, all right, let's turn off the recordings. But then I give her the eye and a nod that between our secret language together means don't turn off the recording. And David says, I can't quote verbatim right now, but he says something akin to, Val, I don't have a good ending for the book or the article. But there's a new investigation by Maxine Waters. Is that her name? Maxine Waters and Adam Schiff. And you got to get a part of that, get into that. And then I think we could get a better ending for the book and the article if you can get involved in this investigation. I'm like, oh, come on, man. He's like, no, I'm serious. Get in there. get your documents there, and I'll have a better book. And it's also his way of saying, if you don't do this, I'm going to draw out the article for another 6 months. You know, I'm not going to publish it for 6 fucking months. So I'm like, oh, fucking David. So I do it. And the reason how I got there, I told Scott on the other podcast, was also Byzantine, quite a Byzantine path. But I go to a dinner party in Hollywood with a bunch of Hollywood people. This wonderful actress named Heather Graham, great actress, one of my favorites. And of course, Moby was there. And Moby's great, of course. He's very political, man. Really smart guy, very political, knows what he's talking about. And he's apparently good friends with Nancy Pelosi. And I said, oh, well, no, Moby, can you put me in touch with Nancy Pelosi? You know, I have all these Deutsche Bank documents, and I give him my whole spiel. And he's like, okay, you know, I'll put you in touch with Nancy Pelosi. But he doesn't. Instead, he says, I have a better idea. Let me put you in touch with Dan Goldman. Dan Goldman is Adam Schiff's lead lawyer. And he says Adam Schiff is, at this time, this was, God, when was this? This was, I don't know, spring of 2019. I said, Dan Goldman and Adam Schiff are starting this new investigation into Trump's finances. I said, oh, great. So why don't you talk to Dan? He's a good friend of mine, and you guys take it from there. So I talked to Dan, and Dan is just an asshole, man. Outright dick. Oh. And I don't hold it against Moby, but this guy was just like, oh, hi, Val. Give me everything you have now. No, I'm not. What do you mean you're not? Moby said that you would. But Moby did not say that. Well, it was a whole fucking thing. And I don't know who he is. I distrust him more and more. And so I said, Dan, how about this? Put me in the room with Adam Schiff. And I said this so that I could vet him, so that he wasn't some random disembodied voice in the phone, that that he was who he says he was, and he could do what he said he could do. So Adam Schiff's office is not far from where I am. So I figured, let's see if he can do this, I'll bring him some documents. So I prepare these hard drives for Adam Schiff and Dan, and I go to the meeting that Dan set up, and I get in the room with Adam Schiff, and I say, hey, Adam Schiff, I've got these documents for you as promised. And he goes, what? Don't give them to me. What am I doing here? We'll give them to Dan. Like, well, Dan told me to give them to you. Like, I don't know why you'd say that. There's a proper chain of evidence. Like, okay, I'm sure there is, but well, why the fuck did you put me here and tell me to come here with these drives if I can't give them to you? I don't know. You're gonna have to talk to Dan. I can't do this. It's not professional. That's all right, fine. So I go back outside and I call Dan, and Dan says, oh, I'm so sorry. Something got fucked up. It's like, let me get in touch with you in the next couple of days and we'll figure something out. During that time, and Dan did not get in touch with me for another 2 weeks, but during those 2 weeks is when the FBI came, when they stepped in. That's when they came and they said, Val, you know, this whole Adam Schiff thing, you know, I'm sure it's great and all, but it's a political thing. You know, this is a political thing. And, you know, everyone's got their own agenda. So, you know, but we're the FBI. We're out here to catch the bad guys. That's it. We don't have a political agenda. We see someone doing illegal stuff, hurting people, we go after them. And that sold me. That was enough. Right there. I was like, you know what? I'm with you guys. So Dan then calls me later and says, Val, okay, I got everything ready to go. I said, Dan, you know what? I'm actually decided not to work with you. I'm going to just go with the FBI. Like, what? And he just fucking lost his shit. Threw a fit, man. All these phone calls with him yelling and screaming at me. And, oh, God, he's a dick. So I decided at the end, I said, look, man, you want anything, just fucking subpoena me, all right? And fuck you. He's like, well, we're going to subpoena me, and fuck you too. You know, and that was it. And he does not subpoena me. And this is where one of the many things David gets incorrect or wrong or purposely lies about, I can't tell which one it is that I asked later, after watching Dan and Adam Schiff flounder, after watching them flounder in their investigation, I mean, it was going nowhere in the early days. I figured, you know, I have this document. I know it's going to help them. I have a few documents. I feel bad. I should just send them these 2 documents. But I can't just do it because then I would be betraying the FBI, because I told them I wouldn't deal with Schiff. So I said, look, Dan, and I sent him a text. This is maybe 3 or 4 months later. I said, Dan, and I'll show you this text if you need it. I have recordings of our conversations. I've got every single text I've ever written, everything. So if you need it, just ask me. So I said, Dan, look, I have some documents for you, but you're going to have to subpoena me because I can't. If you subpoena me, then the FBI will know that I had no choice. Okay. And he said, Val, that's a good idea. Sorry, we got off onto the wrong foot. And I said, yeah, me too. I'm sorry, blah, blah, blah. And I said, great. Well, I'll send me the subpoena as soon as you can. He goes, no problem. And 2 days later, he subpoenaed me. And that's how that happened. That's it. Very innocent. Not the trying to extort them for money and subpoena me because I'm an asshole story that David purported.
Well, yeah, and actually, I want to get to that in a second. But Scott, I want to get you in here to help us to pick up the thread here and place this into the broader narrative of Trump and Russia, because you've written a book on this, and one of the, I think, key points that really becomes evident in your book and in some of the writings from other people is just how vast all of this information is, and it's quite difficult to really put it all together and keep it straight in your mind. So that's what I'd like you to do for us. How does the information from Val on this story that you guys have broken in Forensic News, how does that fit into the broader Trump-Russia puzzle, and does it help us to clarify some areas that previously had been a bit opaque?
Yeah, so it's interesting. We don't really have a good idea if Mueller looked into Trump's finances. In fact, I'd say it's probably unlikely. We never really had any solid reporting that Mueller subpoenaed any financial records. There was one report that was recanted. So this thread of Trump's finances and the Trump org loans and other business dealings is something that Mueller didn't really follow. And like we said, we talked about how, being an underwriter, VTB would have access to financial information from Trump and from the Trump organization. And that, for me, just as as a writer, as a researcher, raises serious counterintelligence concerns. If the Kremlin had an inside look into Trump's finances, where there's more than likely, I would say, financial wrongdoing, that could obviously be something that they could hold over his head. And that's just a counterintelligence nightmare. So, in the broader context of things, I don't think it's unimportant because it wasn't in the Mueller report. I just don't think that that's something that he thought was in his purview. And we know there's ongoing counterintelligence investigations now into Trump and Russia specifically. So I would say that this article kind of fits into that side of things more than the criminal side, though we do talk about the criminal money laundering investigation that's happening into Deutsche Bank. But in terms of Trump, Russia, go ahead, Val.
No, sorry. I just wanted to quickly interject. But Scott, you and I did find something interesting recently.
Oh yeah, I could probably tease it out. I don't know how much I want to say. Forensic News.
Buddy, you take this one.
So we have a lot more evidence pointing to Russia's involvement in Deutsche Bank. That for whatever reason hasn't been published, even though I know, Val, you've shared some of this information with other people, but we'll be publishing that probably within a week or so. And it really just strengthens the connection between Deutsche Bank and the Russian state as a whole. And that's a very important missing link that hasn't been established yet, but we're going to be on that path here pretty soon.
And there's also a possibility that Mueller, and one of his 14 investigations, he delegated to other districts like SDNY.
At the end of the Mueller report, there's a bunch. I think 14 or 12 or something like that Mueller basically farmed out. We only know a couple of those. One of them was like George Nader. There are a couple others that have been named. The Trump inauguration investigation.
Right.
But there's a lot of those that are still completely redacted, and we still don't know anything about it. Like I tweeted the other day, 11% of the report is still completely redacted, and that's kind of ridiculous considering that it's taxpayer funded.
Right.
I wanted to ask something else that was mentioned in the article that some people who, even casual observers of all of these issues, might remember this whole story of Trump Tower Moscow and Felix Sater and potentially the involvement of VTB in this massive venture that, although it didn't happen, really is quite central to this whole story. So can you draw that out for us a little bit about this this Felix Sater VTB connection and whether that's relevant to what we're talking about?
Yeah,
Well,
I think
Scott published a great letter from Michael Cohen. Remember?
Yeah, Michael Cohen hate tweeted at me one time. But yeah, no, the Trump Tower Moscow stuff is interesting.
Sorry, Scott. He didn't just tweet it. He wrote that letter to who was it, Felix Sater, or was it from Felix Sater to Michael Cohen?
Yeah, so it's from this. Yeah, it's from Sater. Basically saying it's an email in late 2015, basically saying that VTB was going to be the one that financed Trump Tower Moscow, and they were also the entity that was going to arrange for the visas for Michael Cohen and Sater to travel to Moscow to do the deal. So Sater, it's in black and white, pretty much saying that he has connections to VTB. I subsequently called him last week, and he denied anything about, like, pretty much a blanket denial. He said there was no contact with anyone at VTB who knew the Trump organization. There's no connection between VTB and Trump.
Good grief.
Basically,
it's right there in the letter.
Yeah, it's pretty clear in the email that he knew somebody at VTB, and his connections to Russian intelligence are interesting as a whole. But
Andrei Kostin directly,
his connections to multiple intelligence agencies are quite interesting.
Yes. Yeah, and Andrei Kostin, that's a good point, Val. Andrei Kostin leads VTB. I don't know what his title is. I think it's president or chairman or something. He's very close to Putin. And his son was actually in charge of Deutsche Bank Moscow. So it's an interesting, like, VTB and Deutsche Bank have this relationship that hasn't been fully fleshed out. And
Scott,
that's why I think the article is so interesting.
Scott, am I tripping right now, or was that the same guy who was caught flying into Fort Lauderdale in the middle of the night last week?
No.
That's a different bank. That was Spare Bank, but that's another very interesting topic that hasn't been answered.
Yeah, there was. I know that you tweeted about it, and some other people, I think, had mentioned some very interesting flight activity going into the closest airport to Mar-a-Lago.
That's right. Trump was there, and the personal jet of the CEO of the largest bank in Russia, Spare Bank. Guy by the name of Herman Greff, who Trump met actually in Moscow when he did the pageant. His private jet flew into Fort Lauderdale for some reason, and nobody seems to know why.
Yeah, on the most important holiday for the Russians on the Russian calendar.
That's right. Yep.
I just one other point on that before we begin to wrap this up. I guess, I know you're an investigator and you're going to stick to the evidence and what can be proven. And so I'm not going to ask you to give your opinion on any, whatever. But from the perspective of someone who will voice their opinion, it sure does look like VTB and Trump is more than just a little cozy relationship. It looks almost like a patronage type situation.
Agreed.
Sure. I mean, I would say, I don't want to speculate, but I would say, based on the documents, we know that VTB and DBTCA have this close financial relationship at the same time that DBTCA was loaning to Trump. So it's not a big jump to make this claim. And there's a lot of documented evidence, like I said, the relationship between VTB and Deutsche.
But if I may, it doesn't necessarily equate to Trump knowing that he was being funded by VTB. Mm-hmm. Trump, I don't that he even cares where the money comes from as long as it's there. So let's say Rosemary Verbralic and decides to repackage a loan, and wherever she gets the funding or wherever, it doesn't matter to Trump. He might not even be aware. So
yeah, and that's pretty common. Yeah, that's pretty common for commercial transactions. The person who is getting loan doesn't often know their underwriter. Totally. But that doesn't negate the fact that the underwriter would have access, like we said, into the financials, which is the whole problem here.
Yeah,
And
that's the problem.
that's in most cases, but in most cases the client doesn't represent 1% of the total liquidity of the firm
That's
either.
Right,
which
right.
is crazy. We didn't expect it to be that much, but we crunched the numbers, and Trump and his family account for more than 1% of
Right.
DBTCA's entire portfolio.
And debt.
So to try to wrap this up here, I
Hmm.
mean, I realize that Enrich screwed you over, Val, and comes to you and says that he doesn't have an ending and he wants you to I don't know, dance on his string to give him an ending or something. But like, is there an ending to all of this? I mean, other than with Trump at the guillotine or something. But I mean, like, really, is there an ending to this, or is this just going to be, from your perspective, just the ongoing search for answers?
Look, man, I don't know. Again, I'm not into this for the politics. I just got thrown into it. I just trying to figure out why my dad killed himself, and that journey is taking me to here right now, talking to you and meeting Scott. I Is there an ending for me? I don't know. I don't think anyone can really know why someone kills themselves. I mean, of course, there's a few reasons you can assume automatically, but it's not something that's completely knowable, and that's something I learned. And to me, that's unsatisfactory, but something I'm going to have to deal with. As far as the Trump stuff and what I've uncovered in this along the path, I mean, clearly the obvious ending is that Trump's impeached and he gets thrown out of office. That's we find out that Trump has been beholden to Russians, into Russian money and Russian banks. The
Hmm.
public doesn't like it, and so they say, "Get the fuck out, Trump." That's the
Boy, I hope that that's the case, but boy, do I have this sneaking feeling that none of this shit comes to see the light of day, and that nobody ever bothers to even understand what happened.
yeah. I hope not.
Well, it
Scott,
will
I mean,
unless I
I
fall
know.
out of a window.
Well, let's not even say such things. But I do think it's important to get this information out there because look, this is a huge story. It was published. Okay, we're recording here on January 11th. I know you're all listening about a week and a half later or so, but this story was published 8 days ago, and I have yet to see any traction in the corporate media on this story. And this is a gigantic story. So
It's
I
it's
have to
ridiculous.
say,
I just want to say real quick, like just in terms of the media stuff, read on past the first 10% of the article. Like the lead for us and the headline was about Trump specifically. But once you get past that, it's all based on documents. It's all based on emails, which we actually print. And how about just call Val? Like Val is
Right.
willing to talk, and he's on the record now with us. And uh, I think that based on the documents that we've seen, there's definitely at least one more story here. So if anyone's interested, like this is such a huge story, and I don't fully understand why they're not picking it up.
Well, you know what?
And that's a
I just want to
frustration
say
that I share.
it's probably my fault, because David fucked me over so badly, and he discredited me. He just turned me into this
That's
asshole, like some asshole self grandizing or grandiose
yeah.
fuck out to make money and go into. I mean, just man, someone no one would ever want to deal with. So it is
Well,
my fault.
it really tainted. I think that's a really good point. Like it tainted everyone's view. That article was like the first. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it was like the first time, pretty much, that you were exposed to the public
That's right. It
in like
was.
a detailed way.
Yeah.
And so it kind
Yeah.
of set the tone. It changed the tone, and everyone now it just discredits Val for some reason because of that article. And so I think
Right.
for us, part of this was like trying to reset the narrative about Val and present him as a credible person with documents that need to be seen.
Yeah, and thank you. It's true, and I blame myself for that, and I hope people will see past this absurdity of David, and eventually I will. My revenge will be enacted completely. This is sort of. I'll tell you later, but this is just sort of part one of a three-part revenge series. So David decided to throw me under the bus. For 2 years, we've been working intensely together, and I did not know what he was going to do. He'd been selling me this great profile, and he's the guy who's been selling Hollywood on me since I met him. God, the first day he came out here, he wrote in that book. Remember, it's a book with David. he brought me his library book, and he inscribed to me before there was an article or even anyone approved the article. He inscribed to me something about on February 5th, 2018, that Val, I can't wait to write your story in all its cinematic glory. You know, and we were all going to it was to get it made in Hollywood and to turn it into a series. And
you should see me making the jerking off motion with my hands.
I know, man. I'm telling you. I was like, oh, okay, David. And this was him. He's the one that has agents. He's got fucking literary and film agents. And he's the one sending me out to meetings to meet producers. And he writes in his article that I'm the one out there doing this for my own self-interest. I couldn't.
A little bit of projection there, I would say.
Yeah, all projection. It's terrible. And so he discredits me. Why? I think because when I'm discredited, when he publishes the book, he sort of takes the credit for everything I gave him. You know, I gave him all the documentation he refers to. I gave him all the sources that he contacted. I gave everything I did not have. I sent them to the people that
write you out of the narrative and then make it look like he did the research himself.
Exactly.
Yep, I mean that sounds like par for the course for a New York Times reporter, to be perfectly honest. But
wow, I didn't know that going in. I did not know that thing existed. I didn't know people were like that. You know, I'm naive.
So, I think that well, I mean, leaving that aside, I think that there's a lot more that's going to come out of this, and I really do appreciate you all coming on the show to talk with me about it. Again, the website forensicnews.net really does need to be bookmarked in your regular rotation, along with Counterpunch and your most trusted outlets. The book, Scott's really important book, Real News: An Investigative Reporter Uncovers the Foundations of the Trump-Russia Conspiracy. Do pick yourself up a copy of that book, and do check out all of Val's work and read up on Val and his story, because it really is interesting, and maybe one day they'll get a good screenwriter to do a real story for you.
Well, are we done now? Man, I got so much more to say. Come on. You're skipping over Glenn Simpson and John Moscow and Bill Browder.
Well,
that's part two.
We're going to have you back for a part two to talk about all of that. And I don't know, we should also drink while we do it or something.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
All right, Scott. Hey, it's a party, right?
That's right.
Anyway, all right.
All right, guys. Thank you so much.
Hey, Scott, Val, thank you again for coming on the show. Listeners, thank you as always for checking out the podcast, for supporting Counterpunch, Forensic News, and all of the alternative media that you do. And we will chat again next week.